afternoon, everyone. I, Mudita Raj, Assistant Professor, Delhi Metropolitan Education, welcome you all to the 28th episode of the Vibrant India series. I also welcome all our viewers who are watching us live on Facebook. Vibrant India series, VIS, is an initiative of DME Media School for celebrating 75 years of India's independence. This series will be a year-long exercise. As a part of this series, we invite inspiring personalities for online talk, interview, and interaction with our students. The invited personalities for this series are from all walks of life and all parts of the country. And today, our special guest is Dr. Mridula Tandon, doctor, social worker, and entrepreneur. I would like to take a moment and introduce Delhi Metropolitan Education to all our viewers. Delhi Metropolitan Education, DME, is an A-grade premier educational institute affiliated to Guru Gobind Singh Indraprasth University, New Delhi, and approved by the Bar Council of India. The institute offers BBA, BA LLB, BBA LLB with BCI approval and BA JMC programs. DME believes in imparting world-class education to its students while training them to develop and enhance their skills. This education and training enables them in taking up challenges of the industry and creating a space for themselves with their competence and vigor. DME Media School is one of the most promising media institutes in the country. It offers BA in journalism and mass communication. It is recognized as a school focused on the growth of its faculty and students through academic and co-curricular activities. Major flagship events and initiatives of the school include BG Varghese Guest Lecture Series, Peer-to-Peer FTP, International Film Festival, SIFI, International Conference ICANN, and Prithika, a convention of media students. And newly added to this list is VIS, the Vibrant India series. It is our privilege to introduce you to the guest, the personality of the 28th episode of VIS. I now request Ayush Sharma, student, DME Media School, to introduce our guest of the day. Over to you, Ayush.
Dr. Mridula Tandon, medical doctor, entrepreneur, philanthropist, president, and co-founder of the NGO Sakshi. She is widely recognized as an entrepreneur. Ma'am is an expert and has worked for education, health, community development, women's empowerment, and revival of India's cultural heritage. Dr. Tandon believes there's an incomparable joy in making a difference to someone else's life and making it better. She's an expert on various intellectual fora, television, radio, and print media. Ma'am is consultant and committee member on gender issues at prestigious government and non-government organizations like Ministry of Defense, IGNOU, Sports Authority of India, NCC, DRDO, and ITTC amongst others. She's a regular speaker on All India Radio, Doordarshan, CNBC on women's issue and sexual harassments. Dr. Tandon promotes Indian music, literature, dance, and arts through meaningful programs and has held over 40 major cultural programs till date and at prestigious venues with international and national artists. So DME Media School is proud to host you, ma'am. Now I request technical team to play the video showing few glimpses from her life.
Thank you, ma'am, for joining us today. I now request Dr. Manasvi Maheshwari, Associate Professor, DME Media School, to please welcome the guest. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mudita. Welcome, everyone, to this 28th episode of Vibrant India series. We launched this digital program on August 9 in 2021 on the anniversary of Quit India movement. Vibrant India series is a tribute to all those people who made supreme sacrifices for the independence of our motherland. India will be completing 75 years of independence this year. We started celebrations last year only. This program has been launched as a part of these celebrations. In the first episode of Vibrant India series, our guest was Brigadier P.K. Saxena, who served the country in 2 wars. Following this, Madam Bhavreen Kandhari, a well-known environment activist, Professor Ujjwal Chaudhary, senior media educator and columnist he was based in Kolkata at that time. Right now, he is in Bangladesh. Dr. Nakul Parashar, science communicator and director of Vigyan Prasar. Dr. Monisha Behel, social activist from Northeast, based in Tezpur. Mr. Rajesh Badal, senior journalist, writer, filmmaker, and broadcaster. Colonel R.K. Durgan, professor and advisor at Amity School of Communication, Amity University, Noida, graced this program. To name the other celebrated personalities in this series, Mr. Ashish Kulkarni, the pioneer of animation industry in India, based in Mumbai, Madam Tripti S. Singhal, an entrepreneur and startup consultant, Captain Dharamveer Singh, a versatile personality and an army man, Madam Jyotika Kalra, member of National Human Rights Commission, Mr. Sanjay Banerjee, a sports journalist, broadcaster and commentator, Mr. Augustine Villath, communication specialist with UNICEF, Captain Indrani Singh, a pilot and entrepreneur, Ms. Vibha Lakera, a social activist, Mr. Arvind Gaur, a theatre personality, Dr. Sachidanand Joshi, a writer and educational administrator, Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni from Indian Army, Dr. Gurmeet Singh, author and global Hindi educator, and squadron leader Prerna Chaturvedi, a veteran of Indian Air Force, were our guest. Since the beginning of 2022, Mr. Shambhunath Shukla, a senior journalist, columnist, and author, Mr. Lakshmi Shankar Vajpayee, an eminent poet, commentator, and broadcaster, Sufi Sayyid Azmal Nizami, custodian of Sufi Dargah Nizamuddin Aulia, Dr. Dev Aikat, media educator from University of North Carolina in US, Miss Pallavi Faujdar, an adventure motorcyclist and social worker, and Mr. S.P. Rawal, an entrepreneur, author, and philanthropist, have graced the Vibrant India series. In the making of this country, we all play our roles as soldier, doctor, engineer, educator, journalist, lawyer, environment activist, social activist, as science communicator, filmmaker, as human rights protector, as journalist and communicator. Today, in episode 28, we have an inspiring personality, Dr. Mridula Tandon, doctor, social worker, and entrepreneur. I welcome Dr. Tandon in Vibrant India series, and I also welcome all our viewers. Over to you, Mudita.
Thank you, ma'am. I now request Professor Dr. Amrit Saxena, Dean DME Media School, and originator and ideator of the Vibrant India series, to address the gathering and take the program forward. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mudita. So it's a matter of immense pleasure that today we have Dr. Mridula Tandon with us. This is a program, as it has already been told, wherein we invite illustrious personality. And India is such a vibrant country and such a vast country. There are so many people who have been doing a lot of good things for the society, and that is how this India is today what we see. Because it's a collective effort that we can make our country at various levels. Everybody is contributing in some way or the other. But when we look at the personalities around, then obviously there are so many people who can inspire us. And it's not only the question of inspiring the younger generations, because though that was the basic thought behind, since we are an educational institution. So we have the students in different streams, but particularly talking about media or journalism and mass communication, these are the students who will be taking up positions in media industry after 2 years or after 3 years. So they will be contributing further in the making of this country. So we need to, we are under obligation to provide all those values to our younger generations, wherein they are on the track and they will be doing the things which are expected from them to build this society and build this country. So that is how this thought came, that we should invite such kind of personalities on this occasion when India is completing 75 years of independence. No doubt reaching out to such personality is not an easy task, and we have taken up a big challenge to have 75 episodes. But then there are people who are always willing to support us, and that is how we are producing this 28th episode of Vibrant India series. Talking about the format of this program, because a lot of things have already been told about Dr. Mridula Tandon, but if I can tell you something further and then I tell you as to what kind of format is there of this program. She is one person who is into so many areas, so many disciplines, that it's difficult to decide that which is her best. She is working for women, she is working for children, she is running one of the NGOs which is so big, so vast, and doing so much work at the ground level. And at the same time, she is into cultural things in literature and culture. She is a major contribution. She's running a big program on YouTube, which is Just Nehin. So, and a number of episodes of that program has been produced. So this is a program is of these kind of people, but that format is a little bit different from the conventional programs which are produced in any such area. We have divided the whole program into 4 segments. After this first segment, which is underway, in the second segment, we will be requesting the guest to speak to us about his or her life journey. And the life journey has to be told, because in everybody's life there are high points, there are low points, there are certain challenges, certain opportunities. So if those things can be narrated to the younger generation in a way wherein there is some takeaway, some point of inspiration that can be there, and not only to the younger generation, to us all, the teachers who are there in this session. If each one of us need inspiration. I myself, if I can tell you, I get inspiration from so many people on a day-to-day basis. It's not that there has to be somebody too big, then you are getting an inspiration. You can get, as teachers, we all can get inspiration from our students, and each one of us do every day. So the whole life journey, I will request Dr. Mridula Tandon to narrate us, so that there are certain, and you can narrate certain anecdotes, certain of your life experiences which you feel are worth sharing. You can do that all. And this second segment will be for 15 to 20 minutes. That will be followed by third section, wherein I will be putting up certain questions based on whatever you would have told us in your talk. And in the final segment, the fourth segment, we will invite the students to put up questions to the guests. So we always try to make this whole program more interactive, and this time also we will try our best to do that, so that more good can be taken out from this Vibrant India series. So I welcome Dr. Mridula Tandon in this episode of Vibrant India series, and I request her to please take over and narrate her life journey.
Many thanks, Professor Ambrish Saxena. First of all, for the honor you've done me by categorizing me with all those eminent names that you just recited a bit back. A few of them are very dear friends: Rajesh Badalji, Lakshmi Shankar Bajpayee, Bhavrin Kandhari, all of them good friends. But even so, I'm honored to be in this very august company of personages you've chosen. And then my thanks to DME for providing a platform like this. And congratulations to you for having even thought about something which really would make a difference in your students' learning attitudes and in their behavior and their thinking. So I would like to begin this by quoting from Mahatma Gandhi, because this is the Amrit Mahotsav, and the father of the nation is responsible for the kind of society we find ourselves in today and the freedom that we enjoy. So if I can quote something from him, which actually embodies a bit of my philosophy as well. Your belief become your thoughts become your words become your actions, and your actions become your habits become your values, and your values will become your character. So be very careful whenever you're reading, speaking, thinking, doing anything. It is because whatever you imbibe, whatever is in your environment, that is what you start to think about, what you start to believe in, what become your habits, what become your character. So going with that same philosophy, I think I've been very lucky because I was born into a family of doctors. My grandparents on both sides were also doctors in the British era. And one of them headed the Central Science Research Institute in Kasoli and was a very eminent scientist, doctor. The other headed the British prison medical department and was posted in the United Provinces in Burma. So consequently, everybody in the family was very educated. My mother was a medical doctor, one of the first to graduate from the Lady Hardinge Medical College. And so was my father. My father was away doing his master's in the University of Berkeley when I was born. 9 years later, when I was 9 years old, my mother left to again go and do her master's in the same university. So I have grown up in an environment where there was no singling out of women as being a different gender. There was no question of anybody being treated differently. It was the individual, what he thought, which became the basis of your judgment of the person. I grew up in a boarding school. And again, in the boarding school, there was a lot of emphasis on Indian values and culture. This was the Sindhya Kanya Vidyalaya in Gwalior. And we were small classes where we had tribal children, we had war widows' children, and we had children from normal society working together. It was a sort of cocoon where we never learned that there was a difference in caste, in social character, in money. So when you come out of school, what you are in a sense is a human being with all the knowledge and none of the world, but none of the knowledge about worldly matters. So no, there was nothing in our head about why people discriminate or do they even discriminate. And going from there into the Armed Forces Medical College, where I got my MBBS degree, it was again the same thing. The forces are known for being completely secular, for being completely equal and having great respect and regard for women. So I had never encountered anything which would have been contrary to what we all believe should happen in a normal society, till I entered civilian life. And I was in the pediatric surgery department in Kalavati Saran Hospital, where whenever we asked people for blood donation, the mother-in-law would say, we cannot ask our sons to give blood, take it from the mother. Imagine newborn children in need of blood, but the grandparents are saying, don't take it from the father, take it from the mother. And the mother's in no condition to give blood at that time. So that's when I first saw discrimination against gender. And then as we went along, we saw in the slums where I worked, because I had this inclination to also do social service. I'd volunteered to be part of a group of doctors who used to go into the old Delhi slums. We saw so much discrimination in so many ways, which all of you are a more aware generation and you can see what's happening around you, that we decided that we needed to do something to bring a culture back which treats a human being as a human being, not in segments of what religion, what caste, what social status, and how much money. We started small, and then in 1993, we founded Sakshi. Sakshi is an NGO which works in community health, education, water and sanitation, women's empowerment, and also in the promotion of India's cultural values. When we first started Sakshi, we had started with the thought that we would do information, communication, and education. And we started by talking about the diseases that are easily preventable, which take up so much of a person's life and money. So tobacco chewing, for instance, which causes oral cancer. We did a whole series on that. We talked about AIDS at a time when in India, it was not even thought that AIDS would be something that we would be coping with in the country. We were able to produce lovely information and communication material, audio, visual. We did couple of series on Doordarshan at that called Bachke Raho, Bachke Chalo. Slowly, as we started working here, we were also working in the slums, and we noticed that the children there did not have adequate hygienic measures, no toilets, no safe drinking water. With the help from UNICEF, we worked, and between 93 and 98 in 250 schools in Delhi, we provided brand new toilets, gave soft skills to the children on how to use them, and also clean, safe drinking water. But what was most interesting was that we put the children in charge of the toilets. So a class 4 child became the president of the club that we founded. A class 3 child became the vice president and in charge of the indenting of supplies for cleaning those spaces. Between these two classes in primary schools, we were able to make certain that the toilets always stayed clean. All the children who was, slum dwellers, they learned how to use these toilets. They also took this learning back and taught their own families, children, as well as neighbors' children. In a sense, they became ambassadors of hygiene and safety, which is now such a big program, but at that time it was very neglected. Alongside this, we noticed that the children were not given enough in terms of clothing or support in school because schools were overcrowded. So we started a non-formal education center called, it was with the government, it was called the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan program. Starting with that one small center where we asked children who had never been to school or who had dropped out of school to come to us. It grew. Today, I'm happy to say we impact about 50,000 children every month between the non-formal education centers, the tuition centers, and the centers for vocational training. We do not run a parallel schooling system because a formal school requires a lot more in terms of being steady in one place, and we want to be within the slums where it is easy for the child to reach us. He does not have to travel far, and he does not have to go through any formal kind of entry. Once the child is with us and he's learned for a couple of months, he understands the discipline, and then we are able to mainstream him into regular government school so that he is able to benefit from all the schemes which converge upon a child of his status and class from the government, whether it is ST or whether it is a minority or because it's a girl child, whatever is due to them will be given to them because they're now in mainstream school. All this learning did not happen easily for us either because we were finding our way in. And every time we saw a child in trouble, we realized we could not restrict ourselves to either just education or health. In fact, we became loco-parentis, where we looked after children as you would in a middle-class family, where you're looking after his health, you're looking after his emotional health as well. You're looking after the fact that he's got to go into an earning period later in life, and how do you teach him to become a self-sufficient citizen with the correct values? So this was part of her Sakshi program. While we were doing this, there were a lot of things which were happening, which were unfortunate. One of which, if all of you have heard of it, probably still remember it, is Nirbhaya. The Nirbhaya Kand, when it happened, shook the conscience of simply everybody in this country. Because of the way it happened and the way we had to go and talk in the community about it, I realized that somewhere we were blaming people and things which obviously, that was the first point of blame, but there was more. When you introspect, it was society which was doing this. It was society which had allowed this sort of mentality to grow, whether it was just by dismissing what they were seeing around them, by being quiet when they should have spoken up, or by neglecting what should have been given a helping hand. For instance, when you see a child on the road and you don't give him a helping hand in the city, you don't think it's a big deal, but that child will then be subjected to so much in humiliation and in bothersome realities that he will grow up thinking the norm is to be as unjust as the injustice meted out to him. There was this time that I heard a ghazal singer and a beautiful piece of poetry. And that poetry said to me in 2 lines what I was trying to say to others in 2 hours. And I thought this form of poetry, this shairi, was amazing. So the 2 lines were, Sar uthaye phirte hain, darinde har su. Su means direction. So the first line is that the monsters are striding in every direction with their heads held high. Sar jhukaye, insan nazar aate hain. Agar aapke andar insaniyat hai, if there is humanity within you, your head will bow down in shame automatically upon hearing of such a despicable act. So these 2 lines brought another vista in front of us, which was our own Hindi poetry, Hindi and Urdu poetry and literature, which is often neglected when we're busy studying in the English medium, and then we're going ahead and working in demanding environment, which again needs a lot of English. So it is easy to forget what you already own. The beauty of our own literature is sometimes neglected because of the lack of time, or because there are too many other interesting things going on. But believe me, once you turn back to it, there is no stopping you from enjoying the thoughts, the very modern thoughts that come out of even centuries old poetry. So that is how our interest developed in promoting Indian music, Indian literature, and Indian culture, whether it was dance or whether it was drama. So I think that was the reason that we ventured into this, because when you hear, I work with the Mahila helpline of the Delhi government, and every day we are answering 20 to 30 help calls of women who are in trouble, whether they are physically assaulted or mentally troubled or given some kind of other treatment because they happen to be what is called the weaker sex, and the other party thinks it's his right that he can get away with being bold and just grabbing what his foot takes. In this, what we found was that when you go into the slums, you hear a lot of what is on the radio, and very commonly the lyrics have slowly descended in their composition, in their thought structure, till you now hear very commonly words like halkat javani and fevicol se chipka do and baby baby. It is fine to have all this, but it's also better to have something which gives you a little more to think of. Can you imagine of a young man who has come from a village where he had nothing? And evidently, when you say he had nothing, he also had no means of entertainment. There was no regular TV, there was no regular cinema hall that he went to. And coming from an environment where, because of deprivation, he was not exposed to all these things, he suddenly walks into the dirtiest colonies in our cities. He has to live with 10 people at a time. He eats at the slumlord's eatery, and he realizes that, oh, here is a new vista where everything which is sold in advertisements has a lady selling it more often than not, underclad if possible. And when he hears music, it's peppy music, it's beautiful music, but the lyrics are weird. And as I said in my quote from Mahatma Gandhi, what you think eventually is what you become. Because you're singing something which goes on with Halkat Javani and you're thinking Halkat Javani, eventually you will start to believe that everybody who you're looking around at has a composition of what you're thinking. So imagine if you were giving them an environment like that, and then they commit a crime because they're also hungry all the time. They're sending half the money they earn back home. And instead of being able to satiate their own hunger, they sometimes resort to something which gives them a little, which is intoxicating enough to probably, satiate that hunger for the time being or make them forget it. If in those conditions he commits a crime, we blame him. But who was the one responsible for putting those thoughts in his head? Who was the one who was responsible for helping him to turn from a fairly decent person in the village to this person who now has all sorts of weird ideas about women in the cities, because we are the ones who helped him to form those ideas. So I think it's, students of mass media, as students of journalism, all of you have a responsibility when you grow into your career to see that when you give something to somebody, there is no question of censoring, but there is a question of responsibility of what are you doing? How are you informing society about what is there? So in our own setups, with Sakshi now has about 40 centers in the NCR region. We also work in Maharashtra, we work in Gujarat, we work in Haryana. But everywhere our children are given a set of values to work with. They write essays, they do other things. And it's not that we want them to grow up being prudish, we want them to grow up being normal. There is a great difference between being normal and becoming exhibitionist and becoming prudish. Neither one nor the other, a balance everywhere. So that is the kind of society that we would love for people to walk into. Going again from recent experiences which you can relate to, COVID, which has happened in the last 2 years, saw this huge, tragic exodus of migrant labor. At that time, watching TV was so painful. The second or the third day of the exodus, there was this man with a bag on his head, a child on his shoulders, the woman with the baby in her arms. And when the TV reporter asked, why are you not staying back? They said कि अगर हम गांव जाएंगे तो हमें कोई 2 रोटी चटनी के साथ दे देगा. अगर हम शहर में रहे तो हम मर जाएंगे भूखे, कोई नहीं पूछेगा. Isn't that such a sad commentary on what has become the urban norm? That we sit inside air-conditioned rooms, we can look at things, but we are disconnected from them. That day, I rang up a lot of friends within the colony where I live, all of them with 1 child or 2 outside, probably living alone. And I said, please give me some rotis so that we can feed these people. I also called Delhi administration. I said, where can we send the food to? So within 2 days, we had built up enough backlog. We were providing 1,000 meals daily to the Delhi shelters for migrant workers. And we were feeding the people on the road till they were stopped from walking on the road. When they were stopped from walking on the road, we started giving out travel packs to people in the railway stations. At the same time, we were able to help people reach their villages through trains and through buses. All of this was not because I knew anyone or somebody else was pulling the strings. It was the wish to help. So when you say that, oh, I'm alone and I cannot do anything, it doesn't really work, because if you wish to do, your wish will be strong enough for you to find ways in which to do this. By calling up a neighbor, by talking to a friend, by standing on the road, by going to where the trouble is, you will be able to do much more than what you ever thought you're capable of. We were able to do so much that the district magistrate of South Delhi, Manish Sisodia ji, Deputy Chief Minister of Delhi, everybody looked at the work we were doing. We were not asking for any kind of recognition. We were not asking for any kind of medals. And yet they came because it was just something that people recognized. And I think one of those, again, poetry, Kabir Sahab's Doha, it really epitomizes what we wanted to do. Sai itna dijiye, jame kutum suanaye. Main bhi bhukha na rahun, sadhu na bhukha jaye. And this is what our old culture was, that when we eat, we always used to take out a little portion of our food for the needy, for the cow or the dog, for an animal, for a person who's hungry, you would give annadan. But we've forgotten, because as we grow more modern, we grow away from what we think is tradition and orthodox culture. We put everything in the dustbin, the good and the bad. So please sieve through whatever you have learned or seen or heard as you grew up. Do discard what you feel is not useful to anybody, but do keep what takes you back to the roots. It's the roots which actually keep you moored to the ground, which allow you to soar even higher, because there is something which you're able to relate to, which gives you the inspiration to go forward and do anything. When you turn rootless, when there is no inspiration behind you, all you have is to look at something in front of you which you want to achieve, then every stop that you have, every failure that you have, instead of leading to a success, eventually makes you feel more and more despondent. In our work, we've seen a lot of people fuse themselves because they were not able to accept the failures which come as part of the travel to success. The road to success is not easy, it isn't straight. And what is success? I mean, in the end, is it about having a lot of money, or is it about having a lot of happiness? Money is necessary for happiness, but that's not the only thing. You need friends, you need family, you need to have a sense of purpose, a sense of achievement. And that achievement, believe me, the best and the most beautiful happiness comes from helping another person. No matter what you achieve in terms of wealth, in terms of recognition, helping another person, giving him a hand to hold and bring his life up, making a difference in someone else's life, actually becomes one of the best ways you can reward yourself. And this is what I've learned in my life's journey, because going from being a doctor to becoming a social worker, to becoming a person who promotes literature and culture, I have never wanted to actually sit down and say that this is what I'm doing because of this. It has been a natural flow of looking at life and enjoying it every moment, living every moment, making certain that everything I do is something that I enjoy doing, and it stays with my core belief that if I can help somebody, then I'm actually helping myself. If I'm able to give happiness to another person, if I can make a difference in a boy's life, a boy who would otherwise just remain a child in a slum and grow up to be maybe a small-time thief or a bootlegger, if I can change that life, then I have done for myself something more than I would have done by just keeping count of the money that I've earned and sitting, in a posh place. It just doesn't seem to work that way for a lot of us who are in the social service sector. So I think that is about what I would like to tell you about my life. Yes, my life's not been all roses all the way through all this. Everybody has ups and downs, but the best way even to get out of a down is to pull yourself out of that downside by looking out and helping another person. There is another piece of poetry I'd like to share with you. This is from Farhad Shehzad, whose verses have been sung enormously by people like Mehndi Hasan Khan Sahab. Even Lataji has sung his ghazals. Jagjit Singh has, and Ghulam Ali, and every known singer in the world in this century and the last have sung his verses. So he says, Zara sa aapse bahar nikal ke dekho to, Zara sa aapse bahar nikal ke dekho to, मैं जिंदगी हूं मेरे साथ चल के देखो तो. यकीनन अगर आप अपने दुखों को भूल के अपने कमरों से निकल के बाहर की तरफ देखेंगे तो जिंदगी आपको बुला रही है, और जिंदगी के साथ चलेंगे तो इससे खूबसूरत आपके पास और कोई ऑल्टरनेटिव ही नहीं है कि जिस तरह आप जिंदगी बिताना चाहें उस जिंदगी को जिए, enjoy करें every day, whatever it brings to you is a gift from God. If it has brought you success, thank him. If it has brought you failure, again, it is because it needs to teach you something better is waiting for you. So, मैं जिंदगी हूँ, मेरे साथ चल के देखो तो. And that is, I think, what I would like you to take away from my talk. Ji.
Thank you, Dr. Mridula ji. There are several things which I want to ask. Though, I mean, you have told us so many things. But one thing to begin with, I would like to ask you, since you believe in Gandhian philosophy, and the kind of period that we are passing through, there is a lot of debate on this, but then I will be focusing on such things which are relevant for the younger generation. So what part of Gandhian philosophy you would like to take to these young people, which you feel should be practiced, should be adopted by these young children, by young students, so that that can do some good to our society?
Well, I think Gandhian philosophy by itself is a very large subject, but what I would like you people to remember is, one, he talked to us about secularism. Secularism does not mean a religionism. You can be as religious as you like. Mahatma Gandhi stayed a Hindu all his life, and he was very proud to be a Hindu. But he could see the other person's religion without saying that it doesn't work for me, you can't have this religion out. At the same time, he was not for pseudo-secularism. He was not for fake certificates for himself in which, you will try and deride your own religion because you want to appear secular elsewhere. Please don't do that. Whether you are a Christian, a Hindu, a Muslim, a Sikh, be very, very proud of your own religion because that is what your basic faith is. And all religions teach you the same thing in the end. And they would all converge on the same one spark above, because if there was more than one divine spark above, there would be a lot of fights in heaven, which we can see there are not. So please never allow your religion to come out in the open and become an exhibition for everybody. It's a private matter between you and your God, and yet it is a matter where you should feel proud to be what you are. So from Gandhi, I think this is one very, very serious message to take across, especially in these times when everybody is being communally divisive. There is no point, because in the end, it is the same God that we all worship. There are many ways to call him. There are many ways of praying to him, but they eventually end down to insaniyat. And you know in your heart of hearts what you're doing. It doesn't need a textbook to tell you, be good to your gods, be good to your neighbors, honor your parents. All these are things which are written there, but which are also within your own heart. So for you, when you go into the life that you're going to go into in future, your conscience is the best keeper of what a person like Gandhi would have thought about the actions that you're about to take. And if you can live by your conscience, you've achieved a lot in your life.
Yeah. So absolutely correct. I mean, in fact, and we all, most of the people believe in secularism. There's no doubt about that, though there are different kind of people who sometimes might be creating some problem. Now, moving on to another important aspect that you touched upon is gender. And as you narrated from your own story that you never came across initially, that there are problems or there are issues with the gender, but then when you entered the society and then you found such kind of incidents wherein, and then you also started working on this aspect wherein no gender discrimination or no such thing should happen in our society. And ideally that is what we all strive for. But can I ask you, how can you explain this further, that how the young people should take care of this gender aspect, and how one can make sure that there is and how one can make sure that there is no discrimination or no disparity on the issue of gender?
Ambrish again, a very vast topic. I will just like to tell everybody here, you belong to the modern era where everything is given to you practically on a platter as compared to what happened in earlier times. And yet we find some horror stories coming in from all over. And believe me, gender discrimination doesn't happen only in villages where you say there is a cup or a panchayat. It happens equally in the ultra-rich segments of an urban metropolis like Delhi. The basic thing one needs to remember is that gender is something that society has imposed upon you, and sex is something that you're born with. So if you're a thinking person, you will realize that eventually it is not what society imposes upon you, but your own thinking and your own conscience, which will allow you and make you, in fact, make you want to do the right thing, which is to treat the other person as a human being, somebody who deserves equally to live in dignity, with safety, with respect. The kind that you would want for yourself is the kind you should be giving to others. Do unto others as you would unto yourself. Very famous saying, but it's true. If you treat a woman with safety and dignity and respect, she's not asking for anything else. She doesn't really want you to hold the door open for her or, allow her to walk in front of you. If you do that, that is an extra mile you're going, but at least do not belittle her efforts. Allow her to walk with you. There's a beautiful piece of poetry by Majaz. There's another beautiful piece of poetry by Javed Akhtar's father. I would like you to read these yourself, because otherwise I'll be, narrating poetry all the time to you. But both of these gentlemen, Majaz incidentally was Javed Akhtar's maternal uncle, Mamaji. So they have both said in their different shairi that the woman should get up and walk shoulder to shoulder with her beloved, with the world, with the husband. And this at a time, mind you, which was pre-partition. So at least 70, 80 years ago that they were writing this. If they could have thought of it then, why can't we think of it today? And think of it as something which is not just in shairi, but practical and doable, and where everybody is given a chance to achieve the best that they can to soar in the skies to whatever level they wish to do.
Yeah.
So,
Mridula
it is a very serious topic. Gender discrimination and sexual harassment, especially at the workplace, are things which have had echoes going right up to the Supreme Court. Laws have been changed because of the horrors we have seen here. Those things affect you as you enter your working life. Each of you needs to be aware of what these laws are, because whether you're a man or a woman, the laws are equal in terms of their impact on your lives. So please be aware as you grow and as you go into the world. If you see any trouble anywhere which is gender-based, please raise your voice. आवाज उठाइए. आवाज आज आप नहीं उठाएंगे तो कल वो ही चिंगारी आग बन के आप ही के आसपास लग जाएगी. Please ensure that every woman is treated with respect and the dignity that a human being deserves. Not a woman, but a human being. So whether it is gender discrimination in this case, with women, with transgenders, with boys, make sure that you don't allow such a thing to happen in front of you and keep quiet about it.
मृदुला जी, हम एक सवाल मैं और आपसे पूछना चाहता हूँ. चूंकि आप you are working in the social sector and particularly working for the children through your NGO. So tremendous work you have done with children and all. But then do you think there is some more things which should be done for children in terms of policy making, in terms of whatever policies are there, in terms of execution on those policies, and there is any such gap, any such area wherein we need to work more for children?
Ambrish, the laws that have been made already are actually pretty strong and should become very effective if they're implemented correctly. We've got the right to education law, we've got the POSCO law, we've got laws to protect children in many ways from as many possible dangers as have been envisaged already. Unfortunately, we have not been able to implement them across the board as successfully as they should be implemented, whether it is the child beggar that you see on the red light, whether it is the child who is being assaulted in what was supposed to be the safety of his own home, whether it is the child who is working on a thelewala's place instead of being in school and studying. These are their laws to prevent all these situations. But what is happening is the reality is that we as a community also need to take responsibility, not just the government, but we, each one of us as citizens, when we see a child in trouble, when we see there is something which is missing in this child's life, we should take the trouble to stop and ask, educate ourselves so we can educate the children. If you have even the basic knowledge of what is available to a child in terms of government benefits, you will be able to help another child to avail of those benefits. If neither is he aware of what benefits there are, nor people around him, his own benefactors, his own relatives, or somebody older to him, then how is he going to get those benefits? How is he going to enter a government school unless he knows the procedure to enter a school? The migrant labor who come from small villages are afraid very often to go and talk to people within a school for admission. More often, they don't even care. They are happier if the child does not go to school, but goes to work so he can bring home a few pennies more for the daily living. It is when he goes to work in some place like this that whoever he's working for should take the responsibility of telling him what can be done for him, helping him, finding out what schemes are there, talking to people who can help him implement those schemes. I think that would be one of the most necessary things, because we can talk of laws, but we cannot implement them without the community's help. Yeah. So it is for each of us in the community to see in what direction we can help a child.
Yeah. So now moving on to the last segment, I will request students who are there in this session and those who are willing to ask questions to please come on camera and ask questions.
Good afternoon, ma'am. It was really a nice session. It was really nice knowing you. So I have one doubt, that is like, how can we drive socio-emotion changes in behavior amongst students with respect to gender and humanity?
Can you repeat that question? How do you want to?
How can we drive emotional changes in behavior amongst students with respect to gender and humanity?
All right, so that's a very good question. And it is something which I think most of the students in your age group would not even be aware of, in terms of, firstly, you have to be able to inform them about the difference between gender and sex. Sex is something which is given by nature, which you're born with. Gender is something which is imposed by society on you. So when these two things are separate in your mind, you can identify what is the basic and the necessary and what is the unnecessary and imposed in terms of societal obligations. And then between you students, you can, I'm sure, find a lot of ways, creative methodology through which you can bring that message out that, why is it that a woman is expected to behave in a certain way and a man in a different way, when maybe a man would be more comfortable being able to cry and vent his emotions out. He may be comfortable helping with the household chores. Why is the woman the only one who must do the household chores? Why is she the only one who's expected to work from morning till night, whether it is keeping the house or going out to work, while the husband has other ways of, being involved? Why is the husband the only one to make a financial decision instead of it being a joint decision? So it would be, as creative individuals, all of you would be able to find many ways of bringing this stark contrast between what is expected by society from the female and the male, as opposed to what actually is possible. In fact, you can even bring some of the matriarchal societies like those in the Northeast or the Kerala into sharp focus when you talk about it, and how those societies are very functional too. And that is when the woman is the one with all the say and the financial hold within the community. So, yeah.
Yeah. Jyoti, you want to ask question?
Sir, good evening. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
Ma'am, my question is, what skills we need to improve for becoming a good social worker?
I think the first skill is to be a good listener, because if you go in to do social work, you cannot go in with a pre-formulated idea कि आज मैंने इनको बोलना है कि सबने नहाना है और फिर कपड़े पहनने हैं. Maybe that's your agenda. लेकिन पहले आपने क्या करना है? आपने need based survey करनी है. आपने उनकी need को जानना है. उसी के बाद आप उस need के साथ साथ अपना काम कर सकते हैं. I'll give you an instance कि हम लोग एक गांव में काम कर रहे हैं मेहरौली में. When we went in and we asked the women of the houses there, they said they would like to learn beauty parlor and train cutting, tailoring and embroidery. When we talked to the panchayat and the men, they said लाली लिपस्टिक लगाने से हमारी बेटियां बिगड़ जाएंगी, हमको नहीं आपसे ये सब सिखाना उनको. We had to talk to those men over and over again to inform them that ये उनके बिगाड़ने का सवाल नहीं है. वो घर में भी आपके यहाँ पे शादी ब्याह होता है, उसमें पैसे खर्चे जाते हैं. बच्चियां उसमें एक दूसरे को सजा लेंगी. ईद, दिवाली, होली पे भी ऐसी बातों का जरूरी होता है, वहां कर लेंगी. So, you have to go in and explain to the community something in which they see their benefit. Only then can you work. So this essential thing is to listen to what they're saying. If the men are saying you're spoiling our women, give them a counter argument. Why not? If they're saying they want something, explain to them how it's possible, what is needed. And you need to educate yourself on what are the benefits which these people in this particular community will get, whether it is children you're working with or women you're working with, minorities you're working with, whichever way. You have to be able to, knowledge is power. So if you have the tools or what is available to them, then you can go ahead and work with them.
जी. और खुशी शर्मा is there to ask question. Khushi.
Good afternoon. Ma'am, as from profession, you are a doctor. So what inspires you to do social work or anything special?
Khushi, I think being a doctor means being a healer. You can be a doctor of the physical body. You can be a doctor of the mental health, or you can be a doctor of the emotional health. And to me, it has always been attractive to heal people in whichever way I can. So when you heal a community, you're called social worker. That's the only difference.
Yeah. Vinayak, you asked the question.
Yes, sir. Hello, ma'am. My question is, in a world where poverty and hunger are at its peak and millions die because of inability to even get a bread of peace, and government and people in power are spending more money on spacecraft and unnecessary things. So is there any correct way to balance the economic health and the social gaps?
Well, I'll tell you something. Hunger has been a scourge not just of our country, but even today, there are places in the most advanced of countries like the USA where people still have hunger and unable to find food enough to feed themselves or their families. If we leave everything to the government, the way it trickles down in terms of benefits, very often we've seen that those benefits are not delivered where they should be done. And yet, in our own society, we've seen from a long time through famine in the last century before independence, through various kinds of things, and including the pandemic now, it is eventually the society which has to band together and not just provide from their own coffers, also see that the government aid goes into the correct recipient's hand. If you see that government aid trickling into the wrong pockets, enriching people who should not be enriched, stand up and speak. If you see there is somebody in need where government aid has not reached, help that person to get that aid. But don't stop just there. It is a moral duty, I believe, on all of us to share what we have with those who have nothing. How can I sleep in peace if I know my neighbor is going hungry? So the same way, if there was a community, if there was a village where there was somebody hungry, they would have found a way of giving that person 2 meals a day. We do that even now in the cities. It's just that people who live in really rich colonies in multi-story apartments have forgotten how to do what was the basic community service which was prevalent at one time. So you need to be able to see that government aid goes where it's needed, and you need to make certain that beyond that aid, people themselves offer help to those in need.
जी, और साक्षी मिश्रा अपना सवाल पूछो.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
As ma'am, you completed your studies from the medical college, then you started practicing medicine. Not only this, you have also done a lot for women empowerment and child education. So, ma'am, I want you to ask that what motivated you to do social service, and ma'am, how you managed to balance all these things like practicing medicine as well as doing social services.
Sakshi, it's just a question of what interests you. So rather than sitting down and putting my feet up when I had free time, even as a doctor, you get a little bit of free time. I would prefer to go out and see what's happening, work with other NGOs and go down to, say, a Turkman Gate or Old Delhi, or go into the slums where the poorer section lived and give them medical services. That gave me greater satisfaction than just sitting down and watching a movie or, having a bit of rest. So it's just a question of what gives you happiness.
सो आगे बढ़ते हैं. चूंकि समय की थोड़ी कमी है, सारे स्टूडेंट के सवाल नहीं हो पाएंगे, और जो भी लोग पूछना चाहते हैं उनके लिए कॉशन है कि डोंट रिपीट द क्वेश्चन. इफ यू हैव समथिंग न्यू टू आस्क, ओनली देन यू शुड आस्क. या शिक्षा, आस्क योर क्वेश्चन.
Good evening, ma'am. As you said that at the time of Corona, there was a issue of depression. Like media spread the news like deaths are being happened, lots of deaths, and a situation of depression was happening. So, what aspects, what do's and don'ts you suggest when a medical emergency like Corona happened to media, so that they can present the news in a way that it doesn't affect the mental health of the people?
Yes, I would suggest that it's presented in a way which doesn't create panic, but one cannot blame the media alone in this, because when COVID happened, I think it is a once in a century kind of situation where nobody was aware of the enormous toll it would take on people. And the way it was presented in the beginning, it led to this huge panic, which a more responsible journalism would have helped to avoid.
Yeah. Ayushi, ask your question.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, sir. मैम आपका मैम इतनी इंफॉर्मेटिव इंफॉर्मेशन देने के लिए आपका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया. मैम मेरा क्वेश्चन आपसे ये है कि जैसे आप एनजीओज में काम करते हैं, कोविड टाइम में भी आपने बहुत लोगों की हेल्प करी, तो लोगों को कन्विंस करने के लिए कि वो डोनेट करें और वॉलंटियर करें, उसके लिए आपको क्या क्या डिफिकल्टीज आई और आपने उनसे किस तरीके से डील किया?
But I don't think I need to convince anybody, क्योंकि हर एक human being के अंदर there is a kernel of wanting to help. There is a bigger inclination to doubt where your money is going and what way it's doing. If I'm standing on the road and giving food with my own hands and people see me doing that, they will come and they will stand with me and give food. Maybe they won't have the time to stand with me, then they will give me the food कि मेरी तरफ से दे दो. So ये नहीं है कि मुझे किसी के पास जाके मांगना पड़ा. मैंने नहीं मांगा. मैं आज तक, I'm very happy to say, we have never, through Sakshi, my NGO which works for the poor, through Jashne-Hind, my NGO which works for culture, or in my own personal individual level, never had to go and say कि मुझे पैसे दो, मैंने कुछ अच्छा काम करना है. अच्छा काम आप शुरू करेंगे, अकेले चलिए, लोग आपको देखेंगे, साथ साथ आएंगे. Who does not want to help? Believe me, in a colony where I know very few people because I'm busy and running around all day, over 200 people came to help just because they heard of what I was doing. People I'd never heard of, I'd never met. People like Vishal Dadlani, music composer in Bollywood, just sent across a check because he had heard that there was work being done, which was genuine and which he wanted to help in. So you don't need to go ask, don't waste your time. Just do what you want to do and people will come and join you.
Okay, so we move on towards the conclusion of this session. Ayush, you have some question to ask?
Ma'am, you talked about verbal cues and gender. So what are some non-verbal cues that affect gender stereotyping?
Well, in non-verbal, you would find a lot of the times people who are not conforming to a particular mold of gender being given the kind of looks which will deter them from doing what they would otherwise want to do. So it's the society again, which whether verbally or through non-verbal cues is able to segregate behavior of different sexes in a way in which they deem appropriate. So for instance, what I would say is even non-verbally, when you go into a very hot topic of today, which is the hijab, and why it should be worn in school and why it should not be. Young girls at an age of 10, 11, 12 do not have the sense to make a educated choice for themselves. So where are the cues coming from? They're coming from non-verbal appreciation or depreciation of whatever they're doing. So that's the most recent and most visible example today of what would be a verbal cue for gender appropriate behavior.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Mridula Tandon. Now we move on towards the conclusion of this session. Thank you so much for touching upon so many aspects and inspiring these students to do something for the society, as this lot of curiosity we have found among themselves. And if I'm asked to sum up what all you said, so you touched upon all issues related to social sector, related to child development, related to women development, and above all, whatever you said, that we should all accept whatever is there as far as our shortcomings or failures are concerned, but then we should always live on with a purpose. We should have a sense of achievement, and we should try to live every moment of our life. And then the final thing, that if our neighbor is happy, only then we can be happy. So we should all work for the happiness of others so that we can also be happy in life. That could be the biggest mantra in anybody's life. And finally, to have this concluding thing, I will request you, since you are so much into poetry, into literature, and obviously there are so many shades of your life which was not possible to cover in 60 or 70 minutes. But to conclude, I will request you to tell us some few lines from some ghazal, which is your interest area, which is very befitting and which is inspiring to us all.
Well, that is really a tall order, but for children of your age who are now going into a life which will eventually lead to marriage, hopefully, and being together, and the kind of internet that we see, the kind of preoccupation with social media and WhatsApp and laptop meeting, numbers and meeting targets, it becomes a very busy life. Do keep in mind two lines from a poet which say, "Dono ke darmiyan ye ajab fasla raha, wo mere saath hoke bhi mujhse juda raha." जब आप अपनी जिंदगी में आगे जाएं, and one of you is on WhatsApp and the other one is on the laptop meeting targets, do remember you're sharing the room, you're sharing probably the sofa, but दोनों के बीच ये अजब फासला रहा, वो मेरे साथ होके भी मुझसे जुदा रहा. So do not allow this fasla to creep up. Do not allow any distance to take you away from an actual relationship because of a virtual relationship, which is not going to be sustainable when you actually need somebody to be with you. So live life, enjoy yourselves, and live in the moment. Every moment is very precious.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mridula Tandon, for giving us so much good advices, good thought. And I believe that there is so much takeaway from this session, and our students will be better people, better persons after this session. Thank you, Dr. Tandon. Thank you all. Thank you.
Many thanks, Dr. Saxena, for calling me, and thank you.
The first impression that comes to our mind about any college: tall buildings, big classrooms, large lobby areas, thick books, IT labs, assignments, class tests, and projects, nothing besides that. Every hour, minute, second spent here help us carving and shaping our persona, cultivating innovative mindsets for the challenging world. Learning is a lifelong process. Sharing knowledge, inculcating values of life, spark the innovative horizons of mind. Fun and frolic is the nature of every nook and corner here. A daily dose of thrill we are sure to get here.